What happens when one of country music's biggest stars reaches his breaking point on live television? Today, we're diving into the explosive moment that had Blake Shelton storming off the Today with Jenna and Friends show, leaving millions of viewers stunned and the entertainment world buzzing. This isn't just another celebrity interview gone wrong. This is a masterclass in how quickly things can spiral out of control when egos clash and boundaries get crossed. Make sure to subscribe and drop a comment below because you won't believe how this whole situation unfolded. The morning started like any other on the Today with Jenna and Friends show. Blake Shelton walked onto the set with his trademark grin, that easygoing Oklahoma charm that had made him a household name. Jenna Bush-Hager greeted him with her usual enthusiasm, and the cameras rolled as they settled into what everyone expected would be a typical promotional interview for his latest album. It's so good to have you back on the show, Jenna said, her voice bright and welcoming as she adjusted her notes. You look great, by the way. Country life is treating you well. Blake chuckled, settling back in his chair. Well, Jenna, you know me. I'm just a simple guy trying to make some music and enjoy life. Thanks for having me on again. The conversation flowed smoothly at first, touching on his new music, his life away from The Voice, and his relationship with Gwen Stefani. Blake seemed relaxed, cracking jokes and sharing stories with his usual laid-back demeanor. But things began to shift when Jenna's co-host, who had been unusually quiet, decided to jump into the conversation. Blake, I have to ask, the co-host interjected, leaning forward with a serious expression. There's been a lot of talk lately about your past comments on social media. Some people are saying you've been tone deaf about certain social issues. How do you respond to critics who say you're out of touch with what's happening in America? The smile on Blake's face flickered for just a moment. He straightened up slightly, and those who knew him well would have recognized the subtle warning signs. His jaw tightened almost imperceptibly, and his hands, which had been gesturing freely, now rested firmly on the armrests of his chair. Well, Blake said, his voice still controlled, but with a slight edge. I think that's a pretty loaded question right off the bat. I've always been honest about who I am and where I come from. I'm not trying to be something I'm not. Jenna seemed to sense the tension building and tried to steer the conversation back to safer ground. Blake, let's talk about your new single. The fans are really loving it, and the video is incredible. But her co-host wasn't ready to let go. I think it's important that we address these things. Blake, you have a platform, you have influence, and some people feel like you haven't used that responsibly. What do you say to young fans who look up to you but feel let down by some of your positions? Blake's eyes narrowed slightly, and his voice took on a sharper tone. Look, I appreciate that you think this is important, but I came here to talk about my music, not to get ambushed about my personal beliefs. I've never claimed to be a politician or a social activist. I'm a country singer, but don't you think that with great success comes great responsibility? The co-host pressed. My voice matters when I'm singing. Blake shot back, his Oklahoma drawl becoming more pronounced as his irritation grew. When I'm sitting in this chair, I'm here as an entertainer, not as someone's moral compass. And frankly, I don't appreciate being lectured about responsibility by someone who doesn't know the first thing about my life or what I stand for. Jenna jumped in quickly. Blake, we're not trying to lecture you at all. We just want to have an honest conversation. An honest conversation. Blake laughed. But there was no humor in it. An honest conversation would have started with letting me know this was going to be some kind of trial instead of an interview about my music. An honest conversation would respect the fact that I'm here doing you a favor by promoting my album on your show. The co-host wouldn't back down. I think our viewers deserve to know where their favorite celebrities stand on important issues. It's not about attacking you, Blake. It's about accountability. Accountability. Blake's voice rose slightly, and he leaned forward in his chair. Accountability for what exactly? For being successful. For having opinions that might not line up perfectly with whatever narrative you're trying to push here. I've never hidden who I am or where I come from. The tension in the studio was now palpable. Camera operators exchanged glances. Producers whispered urgently into their headsets. Jenna looked increasingly desperate to regain control of the situation. The interview that was supposed to be a light-hearted promotion for Blake's new music had turned into something much more confrontational. Blake. Jenna tried again, her voice taking on a pleading quality. Maybe we can just take a step back here. We're all friends, right? Let's talk about something positive. Your tour is coming up, and I know fans are excited about that. But Blake wasn't ready to let it go. The damage had been done, and his frustration was now fully visible. You know what, Jenna? I thought we were friends too. But friends don't set each other up like this. Friends don't invite someone on their show just to blindside them with gotcha questions about stuff that has nothing to do with why they're there. The co-host, seemingly oblivious to how badly things were going, decided to double down. Blake, I think you're being a little defensive here. These are legitimate questions that people are asking. We're just trying to give you a platform to address them. Defensive. Blake stood up abruptly, his microphone pack catching slightly on his chair. You want to see defensive? This is me. Being as polite as I can be, while you sit there and basically call me irresponsible and out of touch. I've been nothing but respectful to you on your show, and this is what I get in return. The studio fell silent except for the quiet hum of equipment and the distant sound of crew members shifting uncomfortably. Jenna looked mortified, clearly realizing that the interview had gone completely off the rails. Her co-host, however, seemed to think they were having some kind of breakthrough moment. Blake, please sit down. Let's work through this together. I think there's a real opportunity here for you to connect with people who might feel alienated by some of your past statements. That was apparently the final straw. Blake's face went from frustrated to absolutely furious in the span of a heartbeat, his hands clenched into fists at his sides. And when he spoke, his voice was low and dangerous. Connect with people who feel alienated. He repeated slowly, each word dripping with contempt. You know what alienates people? Having some talk show host who's never walked in their shoes tell them what they should think and feel. Want to talk about being out of touch? Look in the mirror. Jenna was frantically gesturing to her producers off camera, clearly desperate for someone to cut to commercial. But the co-host seemed determined to push this confrontation to its absolute limit. Blake, I think you're missing the point here. We're not trying to tell anyone what to think. We're just asking you to take responsibility for the influence you have. There it is again, Blake said, his voice getting louder with each word. Responsibility. You keep using that word like I owe you something. Like I owe everyone something just because I can carry a tune and people happen to like my music. Me tell you something about responsibility. My responsibility is to my family, to my fans who actually care about my music, and to myself. It's not to sit here and be your political punching bag. The co-host leaned back slightly, perhaps finally recognizing that they had pushed too far. But it was far too late to back down now. I'm not trying to make you a punching bag, Blake. I'm just trying to have a meaningful conversation. Meaningful? Blake laughed bitterly. You think this is meaningful? You think ambushing someone on live television and then lecturing them about responsibility is meaningful? This isn't journalism. This isn't even good television. This is just you trying to make yourself feel important by tearing down someone else. Asterisk Jenna made one last desperate attempt to salvage the situation. Blake, please, let's just take a breath. Here, maybe we got off on the wrong foot, but we can turn this around. Your fans love you. We love having you on the show. Asterisk, but Blake was already reaching for his microphone pack, his movements sharp and deliberate. You know what, Jenna? I used to think you were different. I thought you actually cared about your guests as people, not just as opportunities to score points or create drama for your ratings. Asterisk Blake, that's not fair, Jenna protested, her voice cracking slightly. You know that's not what this is about, isn't it? Asterisk Blake challenged, his eyes blazing as he looked between Jenna and her co-host. Then explain to me why I walked in here thinking I was going to talk about music, and instead got treated like I'm running for office. Explain to me why every question has been designed to make me look bad or put me on the defensive. Asterisk, the co-host, incredibly, decided to interrupt again. Blake, I think you're being overly sensitive here. These are questions that any public figure should be prepared to answer. Asterisk Blake stopped what he was doing and stared at the co-host with complete disbelief. Overly sensitive. Did you just call me overly sensitive for not wanting to be ambushed on your show? Asterisk, I'm just saying that if you can't handle tough questions, maybe you shouldn't be doing interviews. The co-host replied, apparently not realizing they had just lit the final fuse. Asterisk, the silence that followed was deafening. Blake stood perfectly still for a moment, and everyone in the studio seemed to be holding their breath. When he finally spoke, his voice was deadly calm. Asterisk, if I can't handle tough questions, he repeated slowly. Let me tell you something about handling tough questions. I've been doing interviews for over 20 years. I've been asked about everything from my divorces to my struggles with alcohol, to my political views, to my relationship with Gwen. I've answered them all honestly and respectfully, because that's what professionals do. Asterisk, he took a step closer to the co-host, his voice rising with each word. But what you're doing isn't asking tough questions. What you're doing is trying to create a moment, trying to get a reaction, trying to make me lose my cool so you can have your viral clip. Well, congratulations, you got what you wanted. Asterisk Blake, please. Jenna tried once more, but he held up a hand to stop her. No, Jenna, I'm done. I came here in good faith to promote my music and maybe have some fun with people I thought were my friends. Instead, I get treated like I'm some kind of villain who needs to be taken down a peg. Asterisk, he started walking toward the edge of the set, pulling his microphone pack completely off as he moved. You want to know what's really irresponsible? It's using your platform to attack people instead of celebrating them. It's forgetting that the person sitting across from you is a human being with feelings, not just content for your show. Asterisk, the co-host, somehow still not getting the message, called out after him, Blake, running away isn't going to solve anything. Why don't you stay and defend your positions? Asterisk, Blake stopped dead in his tracks and slowly turned around. The look on his face was one that anyone who had ever crossed him would recognize, a mixture of hurt, anger, and complete disgust. Asterisk, defend my positions, he said, his voice dangerously quiet. Defend them to who? Asterisk, to you, someone who clearly made up their mind about me before I even walked through that door. Someone who thinks their job is to be judge, jury, and executioner, instead of just asking questions and letting people speak for themselves. Asterisk, he shook his head and let out a laugh that held no warmth whatsoever. You know what the real problem is here? It's not that I won't defend my positions. It's that you never had any intention of actually listening to them. You just wanted to trap me, to make me look bad, to score your points. Asterisk, Jenna was now visibly upset, tears forming in her eyes as she watched one of her favorite guests completely lose faith in her show. Blake, I never wanted this to happen. Please don't leave like this. Asterisk, for a moment, Blake's expression softened slightly as he looked at Jenna. I know you didn't, Jenna, but this is what happens when you let people with agendas hijack your show. This is what happens when you stop treating your guests like people and start treating them like political targets. Asterisk, he glanced back at the co-host with undisguised contempt. And as for you, I hope whatever you think you accomplished here was worth it, because you just burned a bridge with someone who has never been anything but respectful to you on your show. Asterisk, the co-host, incredibly, still seemed to think they held the moral high ground. Blake, I think you're overreacting. All I did was ask some questions that people want answered. Asterisk, questions that people want answered. Blake's voice rose too nearly. A shout, or questions that you wanted to ask because you thought it would make good television. Because there's a big difference between serving your audience and serving your own ego. Asterisk, he turned back toward the exit, but then paused and looked directly into the camera. You know what? I think that people watching at home deserve to know what really happened here today. They deserve to know that I came here to talk about music. To share some stories, to maybe make people smile for a few minutes. Instead, I got lectured about responsibility by people who apparently think their job is to tear down anyone who doesn't think exactly like they do. Asterisk, his eyes locked onto the camera lens with an intensity that seemed to reach through the screen and grab viewers by the collar. If you're watching at home and you've ever felt like the media doesn't represent you fairly, like they're more interested in creating drama than actually listening to what you have to say, then you just watched it happen in real time. Asterisk, the co-host, shifted uncomfortably in their chair, finally seeming to realize that Blake had just turned the tables completely by speaking directly to the audience. He had bypassed them entirely and was now controlling the narrative in a way they hadn't anticipated. Asterisk, Blake. I don't think that's a fair characterization of what happened here. The co-host tried weakly. Asterisk, fair. Blake turned away from the camera. To face them again, his eyebrows raised in disbelief. You want to talk about fair? Fair would have been telling me before we went on air that you planned to grill me about politics instead of music. Fair would have been treating me with the same respect I've always shown this show and everyone on it. Asterisk, he gestured broadly at the set around him. I've been coming on this show for years. I've promoted my albums here. I've shared personal stories. I've tried to be entertaining and genuine because I thought that's what you wanted. But apparently what you really wanted was a chance to take me down. Asterisk, Jenna was now openly crying, unable to hide her anguish. Carefully applied makeup was starting to run as she watched her show implode in real time. Blake, I swear to you, I had no idea this was going to happen. I would never have wanted this. Asterisk, Blake's expression softened again as he looked at her. And for a moment, it seemed like he might sit back down and try to work things out. Jenna, I believe you. I really do. But the fact that you didn't know makes this even worse because it means someone on your own team thought they could use your show to ambush me without even telling you. Asterisk, he looked around the studio, taking in the stunned faces of crew members, the frantic whispers of producers, and the general chaos that his confrontation had created. This is what happens when people forget that television is supposed to be about entertainment, about bringing people together, about making their day a little brighter. Instead, it becomes about division, about gotcha moments, about making people choose sides. Asterisk, the co-host, apparently incapable of reading the room, made one final attempt to salvage their position. Blake, I think you're being unfair to our viewers. They're smart people who can handle complex conversations about important issues. Asterisk, Blake stared at them for a long moment, and when he spoke, his voice was filled with a kind of weary disappointment that was somehow more devastating than his earlier anger. You know what? You're absolutely right about one thing. The viewers are smart.